Hello friends, out here on my farm today on this beautiful fall day, and I have some thoughts that are probably as usual going to trigger a few people, and I think they're very, very important though. It has to do with childhood traumas, and if we can get into the psychology of a child without having to talk to them or even remember them as a child, because a lot of times as a protective mechanism we actually forget our childhood. It's a cognitive dissonance sort of a protective mechanism. When we've had particularly traumatizing events, we just block them out. So if you can see through a person's mind-body connection by looking at their health, I don't care if they are a baby, a newborn baby, you will know what is going on with them, or looking back, what went on with you. And you can validate this stuff in your own life or in others. It's not really a judgment call, it's just how the body reacts to trauma. So if you were a child who was wetting the bed, for instance, think about whether you were afraid of your parent. Now, you might not want to even admit to that, because as a child you love your parent, but how did they discipline you? Was it with spankings? That's very closely linked to bedwetting. And there are other things. Did you get UTIs a lot? That's all about being pissed off and blaming someone, usually a parent. As you're older in life, women get them a lot because they tend to be more likely to be sexually abused than men. So you will see that UTIs are quite rare in men, but they are seen in boys, particularly boys that have been spanked. Then there is low blood pressure. This can happen at any time in your life, but this comes back to feeling a lack of love as a child. And you may actually not even register it as a child. But later on in life, as you learn what love should look like, sometimes more and more you develop a low blood pressure. But it can be definitely tied to just a powerlessness as well, whatever stage in your life you're in. But you tend to feel powerless when you're not loved. So that's all connected. Bronchitis, inflamed family environment, laryngitis, fear speaking up, or anger at authority. This happened to me not just at different times in my life, quite often as a kid, but I noticed it was happening like almost on a monthly basis when I was in a very politically correct situation and married to a very liberal husband for a time. And the more he got into, you can't say that, and the more I got into controversial research, the more I just found myself constantly losing my voice. And turns out it's a throat chakra issue. And all of these things are issues to do with the chakras, but the chakras are opened and closed with a thought. So you can see a definite connection to all these physical problems and our mindsets. The mind-body connection starts, as soon as we are conceived, really. It's amazing, the connections. But anyways, so when we're a kid, we also tend to be very seasick or car sick or air sick. And these are all fear of death, feeling trapped, not being in control. And of course, as a kid, you don't feel in control. Now, if you're a kid that is very nurtured by your parent. Perhaps you're flying and they're nursing you, or you're just allowed more free speech, stuff like that. You're not as likely to have a problem with that. But if you're feeling constantly like you can't cry, you can't say anything, you can't choose a snack, you can't whatever, you can't open the window, you're going to be more prone to having issues with being sick in those sort of trapped situations. Then there's ear infections. Kids quite often will get ear infections, babies especially. Well, that's about anger and frustration at turmoil and chaos, usually at parents arguing. I've seen this even in dogs, honestly. This mind-body connection is not just for, humans. Whenever there's too much chaos, you're going to deal with this rejection and like your body's saying, no, get this out of my, I don't want to even hear this. So of course the earwax and stuff comes out and running, and if it's constant, you're going to have constant ear infections and maybe even bursting of the eardrum, as it's just rejection of all this turmoil. So, a baby, when you see the baby having this ear infection problem, look to the parents. That relationship is not good. And I definitely see that in my kids. Then there's eye issues. So it's not wanting to see what's going on in the past, present, or future. Actually, like pink eye, that's anger and frustration at what the baby's seeing. Again, usually parents. Perhaps it's abusive. Maybe they're beating up on each other. So, yeah. Then there's diarrhea, which is a rejection of ideas or people in your life, fear, or constipation, a lack of trust or fear of releasing. When you have kind of both constipation and then you can't even retain your bowels anymore because of that constant issue, it's called incompresis. This is well known by psychologists and counselors of children, that it's about emotional stress and inability to let go and process your emotions to others. It's very, very common in children who can't talk yet or very early on in life, when they don't have trust of their caregiver, they just can't go. And then as soon as they do go around somebody who they do trust, that's when they're going to be able to let go. But then it's going to dribble and be a problem until they start blocking up again. And honestly, I've seen most of this stuff in my own life or that of my children. And it just got so validated by this book I was reading by Louise Hay, Heal Your Body. It's just amazing. The list is just spot on. And if you don't like it, don't want to admit it, talk to other people that aren't having denial issues and cognitive dissonance, because odds are you just don't want to admit to it. And there are little things that can be a little bit different depending on the age and whatever, but these things are very, very classic childhood problems. Also, nail biting. This is about frustration, stress, but often spite of your parents. Nosebleeds, crying out for love, feeling unnoticed, unrecognized. And, people that have been through all these traumas, they may actually have these nosebleeds around people that they do feel loved by, but they haven't felt loved in the past. And so when they're having a nosebleed, it might come up in a time of extreme, love. They're with somebody that they love. They're in later on in life, they may be actually having a sexual experience, and they're like, I want to be loved. They're crying out to have this love returned. So don't think of it as necessarily a bad thing. It just means that this person needs you. So yeah, it's enlightening to know this stuff, both about yourself and others. And it's really easy to make judgment calls and assumptions now based on this knowledge. I mean, a doctor should be using this knowledge and say, hey, this is a child that is in a really bad situation. We need to deal with this. This is the kind of stuff CPS should be looking for. But instead, CPS has actually gone the opposite way. My children had some of these issues, for instance, and they only had them as soon as they were not in my presence, taken away from me, in fact. And only from injustice, but my kids started having all of these things come up, and I was like, this is a problem, this is a problem, this is a problem, tried to get people's attention. And instead of it being seen as a problem because of where they were and who they were with, they tried to turn it around on me. And that's not how these things work. When you have, and there's other things too. Didn't even mention this, but a classic thing that comes up when people are going through a divorce, their children tend to have like these identity crises, like being transgender or turning gay. This also happened to a child of mine right after they were taken away from me. I was like, isn't this a little coincidental that all these health problems come up? Like, why are we not paying attention to this as a society, as counselors, as psychologists, as the people in these positions of power, doctors, all this? But no, we just want to take a pill for it. We just want to have some medication. And that's what they did to my kids. And it's wrong. It's absolutely wrong. We need to stop this mentality and realize there's a mind-body connection here at the very youngest of ages. Quit just sugarcoating it or pushing it under the carpet. If a child has these problems, you as a parent are most likely the problem. I'm sorry, but that's just the truth. And it's either you or your partner. So that's my rant for the day. Talk to you all later.